Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park, California, has the unique distinction of being the only theme park in the world to have gotten its start as a roadside berry stand. I assume. I actually don't know if that's true. I didn't look it up. I suppose there might actually be another park out there that got its start as a berry stand, but I kinda doubt it. In any case, Knott's was at one point actually a farm, and from humble beginnings as a roadside berry stand in the 1920s, Knott's Berry Farm has grown into one of the most popular theme parks in the United States and has the highest attendance of any Cedar Fair owned park due to its large market area in Southern California, just around 30 minutes or so southeast of LA, as well as its ability to operate year-round. KI Coaster Guy here, and in September of 2019, I had a chance to visit this park for the very first time. And today, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on the experience, so you know what to expect if you're going and you've never been there before. So, my first visit fell right around the time school started for the year, and if I remember right, this was a Monday, so the park was very, very slow that day. This was a good thing in that I was able to get quite a few rides in, but on the other hand, I probably missed out on some of the normal atmosphere of the park. The other thing that kind of sucks is that Ghost Rider, Knott's Berry Farm's CCI wooden coaster, wasn't running that day. I'm not sure how much of a difference it would have made in my overall opinion of the place, but I know a lot of people count Ghost Rider as the best coaster in the park, so I think it probably would have done something. Either way, wasn't anything I could do about that. Fortunately though, I did get to ride most of the other coasters, and we'll get back to those in a minute, but first off, I just want to talk about the look and feel of this place. Knott's Berry Farm bills itself as America's first theme park. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. Holiday World in Indiana also lays claim to that title. I'll let you guys sort that one out in the comments section. But when you come here, you're definitely going to see that the theming is a step above what you might be used to at a Cedar Fair park. The park has several themed areas, including Ghost Town, one of Knott's Berry Farm's oldest locations, based on real ghost towns in the western United States, such as Calico, California, and Prescott, Arizona. Fiesta Village, which has a Mexican theme and is meant to pay tribute to California's Spanish and Mexican heritage. Then there's Boardwalk, which feels to me kind of like if the Beach Boys were a themed area in an amusement park. They also have a Camp Snoopy, which I thought looked great. I didn't have my kids with me on this trip, so there wasn't really a lot of reason for me to spend much time over there, although I did ride Sierra Sidewinder, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but overall, I thought this was one of the better kids areas I've seen. There's just a lot of cool stuff here that you don't normally find at a place like this. There's a horse-drawn carriage you can ride, and this 19th century schoolhouse is pretty cool. This was actually purchased by Walter Knott when the school closed down in the 1940s and moved from Kansas to Knott's Berry Farm in California. Just kind of a unique and interesting attraction to have. Knott's is a small park, but everything here just looks really nice. Despite all the extra theming, it really does feel like a Cedar Fair park to me, but absolutely a step above the other parks in the chain theming-wise, with each area clearly defined and filled with detail. In typical Cedar Fair fashion, it's kept well. It's a really clean park. Although also in typical Cedar Fair fashion, there is like next to zero shade in a lot of this park. And actually, I'm gonna get on a soapbox for a minute about this because I really wanna know what is going on at Cedar Fair regarding trees. Do they have the Onceler working over there or something? It just seems like any tree at a Cedar Fair park that isn't like on the outskirts of the property is in constant danger of being murdered. Now, I've only been to Knott's the one time, but at the parks I'm more familiar with, it just seems like there's less and less available shade every year. Now, I know, like, trees can actually be pretty expensive to maintain. You have to trim them, and then there are pests and other things that can kill them, which is also a whole other expensive thing to deal with, so maybe that's part of it. You know, maybe it was interfering with stuff they were doing underground, like piping and things like that. I don't really know. Either way, I definitely remember Kings Island, at least, having a lot more tree cover around when I was a kid, and I really miss that, especially on a super hot day. I love how Cedar Fair's solution is to scatter those giant folded cocktail napkin canopy things throughout the queues at some of the bigger rides at their parks. It's like, my dude, it's the middle of July. It's like 100 degrees out, like this ain't cutting it. Okay, old man is done yelling at Cloud. in the sky I'm completely exposed under at a Cedar Fair park because there's no goddamn. Knott's Berry Farm has 10 roller coasters, of which I rode 7 during my visit. I didn't ride Ghost Rider, as previously mentioned, and Timberline Twister is like a kiddie coaster, so I didn't get on that one either. Lastly, Pony Express was also closed on that day. So in discussing this aspect of Knott's, let's start here with the coasters that I would consider to be the supporting lineup at the park. So first off, we have Montezuma's Revenge, Knott's Berry Farm's Schwarzkopf Shuttle Loop, opened in 1978. Now this is a launch coaster, which launches out of the station, through a loop, into a spike, backwards through the loop again, back through the station, into a smaller spike, and then back to the station yet again for a complete stop. That's the ride. I didn't love this coaster, to be honest, but I mean, to be fair, it is over 40 years old. This was one of the first launch coasters ever built, so that's pretty cool. It's always nice to see parks continuing to maintain some of these older, historically significant rides, so good on Knott's for that. Then there's Jaguar, a Zierer Tivoli built in 1995. The coolest thing about this ride to me is the queue, which is pretty well themed to like an Aztec temple. This one is definitely more of a family ride, so not at all intense or anything. It's elevated a little bit above the walkways of the park below, which is kind of interesting. Otherwise, not a super memorable ride for me. There are a lot of these sort of straight sections and the ride feels pretty slow, but I think it fills that role of sort of the middle between a kiddie coaster and the bigger ones. Coast Rider is a Mach Rides Wild Mouse, located in the Boardwalk area of the park. It's a wild mouse. If you've been on one, you pretty much know what to expect. I don't really have much to say about it. This was my least favorite coaster I rode that day. And then there's Sierra Sidewinder, a Mach Ride spinning coaster. I thought this one was a lot of fun. It is interesting to me that it's in the kids area, as I had wondered if this was maybe a little much for some of the kids. It is actually pretty intense for something in the kids area, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. One thing about this ride though is it's super short. Now I had never been on a spinning coaster before, so this was pretty cool. Then on to what in my view would be the main cast of coasters. You have Silver Bullet, Knott's Berry Farm's B&M inverted coaster. Right off the bat, I have to say, this is a great looking ride. Not only just the structure itself, but everything around it. It just looks really great in the park, although I cannot say I'm a huge fan of the color scheme. But other than that though, it looks really nice being built over this little lake. As far as the ride experience goes, this is not my favorite B&M invert. I took a handful of rides on this. My very first was in the back row, and my last was in the very front. I definitely preferred the front row seat for this ride. Silver Bullet isn't a bad ride by any means, and I know there are people out there who do count it among their favorite rides of this type, but for me, I thought it was just fine. Hang Time is the coaster I came into the park most excited to try out. This is a Gerstlauer Infinity coaster with a surfing theme. The ride has a vertical lift hill, which I know is a plus for a lot of people, and at the top of the lift, it kind of hangs you over its beyond vertical drop for a little bit. Probably a bit too long in my opinion. But adding this feature to the ride allowed Cedar Fair to market this as California's first dive coaster, so there's that. But this ride really doesn't feel like it's about the dive. It's definitely, as the name suggests, much more about the experience of hang time you get from its 5 inversions. This one's a lot of fun, good stuff. Another thing I like about Hang Time is I think it's just a beautiful coaster. At night, it has this phenomenal light package, which unfortunately I wasn't able to see in person that day because the park closed at 6, but I just love that, super cool looking. This was my number 2 at the park, but I imagine if Ghost Rider was running, Hang Time would probably have ended up being in the number 3 slot. And then we come to Accelerator, the park's Intamin Accelerator model, actually the first of its kind, built in 2002. I love its bigger little brother Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point, but even with the height and speed disparity between these two rides, I think Accelerator might actually be my favorite launch coaster that I've ridden. I don't know what it is about it exactly. My theory is that it's definitely fast enough that you really feel it, but not so fast that everything is just a total blur in the moment, like on Top Thrill Dragster, at least in my opinion. Maybe it's because it's a little smoother. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that you launch right from the station. Whatever it is, there's a certain quality to Accelerator's launch, as well as the rest of its layouts, that I really appreciate. And for me, Accelerator was the highlights of my trip to Knott's Berry Farm. A lot of people will probably disagree with this, but I actually think this ride is weirdly underrated for some reason. I don't hear people talking badly about it so much as just not talking about it much at all. This is also another coaster at Knott's that I really appreciate the look of. In a recent video, Zero Credits Remaining, if you don't know who he is, he's hilarious. You should definitely check him out. I'll link him in the description. Said he thought it was the one coaster that looks better with a faded paint job. And I don't know if he was just kidding or not, but I actually think that's true. It's kind of got this vaporwave vibe going on for it. So with the coasters out of the way, let's talk a little bit about the actual experience of this park. One thing that's worth mentioning that I actually really liked about Knott's is that at least when I was there, towards the end of 2019, pretty much all the rides had bins where you could put your things before boarding the rides. I really appreciated this, especially because at my home parks of Kings Island and Cedar Point, this is largely not the case any longer. You know, they're always trying to get you to buy a locker now for you to put your stuff in. So that was a big plus, but on the negative side, even though the park was very slow that day, it still took a little while to get on everything because at least when I was there, the operations were really slow. I don't remember how many trains they were running for things, and I'm sure they weren't staffed the same way they would be on like a busy day, but I've heard that Knott's Berry Farm has slow operations enough times to think it should probably be mentioned here. Also, I didn't eat anything at Knott's that day, but in the outside area, right outside the gate, there are some shops and restaurants. And inside the park, it looks like they had a lot of just the usual Cedar Fair fare. You know, they had a barbecue joint. They have what is apparently the biggest Johnny Rockets location over in the Boardwalk area. They have a coasters as well, like at Cedar Point. Looking it up online, it seems like they have a ton of options on the meal plan. But like I said, I didn't try any of the food that day, so I can't really give an opinion on any of that. Aside from roller coasters, Knott's also has a pretty decent collection of flat rides and other attractions. I didn't end up riding a lot of them because I'm a bit more of a coaster guy, but I honestly regret missing some of those things, and in the future, when visiting these parks, I'm gonna make more of an effort to get to more things like that so I can talk about them here, even if I'm more focused on the coasters personally. But just to go over some of what they have a Mondial Top Scan, a Chance Morgan Pendulum, an S&S Turbo Drop, which I did actually ride. Nothing wrong with it, but you know, what can I say? It's a drop tower. If you've been on one of these types of rides, you know what it does. I did ride Voyage to the Iron Reef, a Triotech interactive dark ride, but that's not there anymore. That's now Knott's Berry Tales. I honestly don't care that much about flat rides, but I know some of you guys do, and they do have a decent amount of them here. The only one I really wish I had ridden was Calico Mine Ride. I heard a lot of great things about that ride after I had come back home, so I do really regret passing that one up. But otherwise, with the exception of Ghost Rider, and to a lesser extent Pony Express, I feel like I got to do pretty much everything in the park I was actually interested in doing that day. So, should you go to Knott's Berry Farm? Yeah, absolutely. Knott's is a historically significant park and a West Coast institution. Seems like a fabulous park to take a family to. They've got some family coasters, a couple dark rides, and a decent collection of flats. If you're a coaster enthusiast, they have some solid thrill coasters, but you may find their supporting lineup to be a little lacking at the moment. Anyway, folks, that all clear means I'm up, and out of here. Thanks for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day here on YouTube.